It's the bottom of the hour, which means it's the top of our show, Your Voice with the NRP. And we're here as usual every Monday night from 8:30 till 10. And today is Monday, October 24th. It will be a defining week. It is the day on which West Indian cricket coach Phil Simmons tendered his resignation because he has had a rather dubious career. Here in Nevis, the Premier is making history for dubious reasons as well. We'll find out about that when we come back after our first break. But I'll let you know that with me this evening is Powerhouse, Rohan Isles, candidate for the NRP for Nevis 3. We'll take a break, then we'll be right back.
But the economy is broken, the government stick, and the opposition come and take a seat. The debt is high and employment low, and it's the poor people who taking the blow. I say we tired, we need a revolution. We just can't depend on vaccination. I say we tired, time to pick myself off the floor. Just remember people matter more. So when you hear them talking bull on the radio, people used to matter more. Whether you red, blue, orange or yellow, people used to matter more. But when they needed us for last election, we were always the first option. But now they in and they comfortable. People don't matter no more. Boy, some people may not like this, but people used to matter more. RCC and them made a slogan out of it. People used to matter more.
And we're back. That sounds so good. We haven't heard that since we closed out the federal campaign. But now we're heading on to the local scene for elections, which we believe will be called in December of 2022, if not earlier. Welcome to the hot seat, Rowan Isles.
Good evening, Steve, and good evening to our regular listeners and to those who are listening to us for the first time. Let me go across to Nevis 3 and to the wonderful people of Gingerland, from Zion to Rollins to Hartai, Mr. Hanley's Road, down to Clegot. I want to say a special good evening to you. And of course, Mr. Manners, want to give God thanks for the opportunity to be here. You should have been here last week, but I was a bit under the weather. But I am doing much better now, and it's good to be on Your Voice with the NRP.
Well, thank you for being here. And as I said at the top, it's October 24th, the start of what I believe will be a defining week in the history of St. Kitts Nevis. Tomorrow at the Marriott Dome, the National Assembly meets for the first time in 2022. It has not met since the budget session, which lasted all of 5 days in December of 2021. But because some were intent on crashing their federal government, it was a very difficult time for the Federation, and there was no time for the people. People didn't matter anymore. It was all about self-adulation and self-preservation. Now tomorrow at the National Assembly, as I said, the Premier creates dubious history. He will become the first Premier of Nevis who will be at the same time leader of the opposition. And notice, in this dispensation, it will be leader of his royal opposition or loyal opposition. The Premier will become the first politician in the Commonwealth, in the colonies and realms of England, the United Kingdom, to hold the title of leader of his loyal opposition. There's been much debate about that. I don't know what your thoughts are, Rohan, but that doesn't look like a good mix to me.
Well, what can one say? They say start bad and bad. Reality is we suspected that was going to be the case, and that has come to fruition now. It is, as you said, it's a defining moment, because you now get to sit back and for the next couple of weeks look at what the relationship is possibly going to be like between the two leaders, and I am happy that it won't be for long. As at the next local election, the NRP will assume government, and we'll have a new leader there to take Nevis forward. I guess we have seen early the kind of position he wants to take early, and you saw the as you would say, the buttering up of the Labour administration, and so I don't suspect we'll have much fireworks, so to speak, of coming from him. I think the that position and the positions that he's going to take, I suspect, will be rather docile, and we know him to be
a boisterous man,
right? You know, so I suspect we're going to get a little quiet responses from him. I mean, he has indicated that he's going to support where necessary and oppose, and you know, that is all good and well. That is how politicians speak, and so on. So yeah, but what piques my interest, though, is that I found it rather interesting. Since August 4th, I haven't heard any cries for fair share.
No, it was an election cry,
and I hope a lot of voters really take heart to what is happening now, because as you said, that was the rallying cry of CCM, that it was fair share for divisions and fair share at all costs, and it seems to be now a non-existent position, or a little more timid, or a little bit more quiet now, or maybe it was just the opposition at the time that caused the ruckus. But I would like to know at what point there was an announcement made that the fair share is now being had by the Nevis Island administration, and what the arrangement is, and how much is now being sent over on a regular on a monthly basis. Are we getting more than the budgetary support for payment and so on? So that is something I would like to hear about, considering the noise, as they would say, that was being made about the fair share. I mean, for us in NRP, our position remains the same, because we made argument on a legislative agenda, and that is the framework really that builds out how an island or a country is going to develop over 5, 10, 15 years. And so those things are still there. We are still true to those items. We are still looking forward to push the medicinal cannabis industry. We are still looking to push the plans for our divisions to power their own homes through the solar panel program. We're still looking at solar farms. We're still looking at renewable energy. We're still looking at the blue economy, and those were the things we spoke about. We're still looking at free education for our young people, decreasing poverty. So all of those things that we set out our federal campaign on, those things are still true to us today, because that is what we believe fundamentally is in the best interest of divisions. I'm not saying that fair share isn't good for us. It is ours, but we firmly believe that, and I think we've said this time and time again, that should not be based on who is in government. That is something that is constitutionally grounded and firm, that regardless of who is there, what is due to divisions will always be there for division. So defining week and defining days ahead. So much to see. Of course, you spoke about His Majesty's Royal Opposition. Of course, for the first time in our history, we will have the king as our monarch, and so part of the history of the defining moment. Of course, I can't go away from this segment without extending congratulations to Senator Latoya Jones, who is from Barnesgate. And if you know Barnesgate people, regardless of which aisle you sit on, once you're from Barnesgate, there's always going to be that support and that commendation. And so history made. Barnesgate natives are no stranger to history. We can go through a whole litany of people who would have made history in their own right, and I just want to, encourage her to represent all of our people with fairness and humility, and so congratulations to her again.
I'd like to congratulate Latoya as well. As you well know, we taught together at the St. Thomas's primary school.
Yep.
I was her grade 4 teacher or grade 5 teacher. Grade 5 teacher. Was instrumental in her getting her first pair of running shoes. We were at the Grove Park, then Grove Park, then Grove Park. And she, of course, an outstanding athlete. And Jean Liebert was looking on at Grove Park as we did a practice session ahead of inter-primary. And he noticed that she was outstanding. And she said, we need to get her some spikes. And as he told me that they had brought in some from Canada and had them at Baggin House. And as we were heading back to school, we saw her father duck on a backhoe. And I asked the bus driver to stop, flagged him down, and said, you have an outstanding daughter here, and we want you to get her a pair of track shoes. He didn't see the wisdom of it at first, but I encouraged him. And that's how the first student ever at the St. Thomas's Primary School wore track shoes at inter-primary. So congratulations to go around. But back to our premier, he's gone where others failed to tread. We're going on 40 years of independence. Premier Simeon Daniel didn't do it. Van Samway in his first tenure in office ceded to Malcolm Gishard. Joseph Parry didn't. And of course Van Samway in his second term in office, he ceded to Mark Brantley, who said very often from the government benches, the unity benches, that he enjoyed being on that side of the house, and he hoped he'll never go back there on those cold, hard benches. He was making mockery of people like former Prime Minister Denzel Douglas. Now we've come full circle. How do you see that working for Nevis? I think he's severely compromised.
Yeah, I mean, you as you would have laid out, former premiers would have ceded for a particular reason. Their focus must be at all times the advancement of the division people in division government, and to do that without any conflict. And so you want to be able to be in a space where you can negotiate and be comfortable doing so, rather than looking acrimonious and the position of the leader of the opposition. But Steve, you probably deeper than that. And so you ask the question, why didn't he cede? And what I have seen and heard in the public space that he doesn't particularly trust his colleagues, and so maybe he doesn't have that level of confidence in any of his colleagues and either of his partners. I mean, there was quite a bit of chatter, Sean Richards being the leader of the opposition and ceding a senator to the Concerned Citizens Movement, and that didn't happen. And then people were saying, well, since he's the leader of the opposition, he'd cede a senator to his partner. And that didn't happen. And so we know he loves the limelight, and he loves the first and the accolades therein, and so probably that is part of it, but it goes to the heart of what we have seen over time, is that Nevis really isn't his first priority.
Well, I've always felt that the Premier is more concerned about a personal odyssey. Petitions already saying that he has thrown Sean Richards under the bus. They were together. They were the remnants of unity. And so he had confidence in Sean Richards being Prime Minister of St. Kitts Nevis, but no confidence in him being leader of his loyal opposition. I think he always feels he has to be at the top of the tree. And as you said, I'm not sure that will redound to the benefit of Nevis. I'm going to look very closely at the opposition benches tomorrow, because I'm sure even though we're past COVID and we're back into pretty normal times, that there will be social distancing. And I'm sure that Timothy Harris, who he said as recently as last week, have been relegated to the scrap heap of history, will be sitting more than 6 feet away from them. What are your thoughts on that? What do you what do you think? How do you think the opposition will work?
I'm looking forward to. Well, maybe we won't get so much of that inclination at this particular sitting because, of course, it's in most cases formalities. But going forward, we will surely get a sense of what that arrangement and partnership is going to be like. Of course, we know that the Honourable Timothy Harris is going to more than likely stay clear of these two. What I'm more interested in is how it works between leader of PAM and leader of CCM. That is what I'll be paying keen attention to, considering, of course, the fact that the leader of Nevis is, as they say, he's having a bromance with the Prime Minister at the moment, and so that may not very well be sitting well with Sean Richards, considering the battles they had prior to August 5th. I mean, he went out there and he went out hard at Labour, and then here you have his ally and his partner is now saying, so that is what I'll be looking at. I'll be paying very much close attention to that, and then I'll be paying close attention to the stature and the position of the former Prime Minister, Dr. Denzel Douglas. And so that too is going to be something I'll be looking at.
Well, I certainly will have eyes on the former Prime Minister, Timothy Harris. He has been very quiet since the election. I don't know if the media has not engaged him. He has made no public statements. The Premier of Nevis has not stopped, even though that the love relationship is over. He's still throwing darts across the Narrows and saying that he's relegated to the scrap heap of history. My advice to the former Prime Minister is to tell your story. Don't just sit there and take a barrage of insults. You have a story to tell. A lot of things I find out that we're finding out about Nevis, Geothermal for instance, are originating on the other side of the Narrows. And I believe that Timothy Harris owes it to the Federation to tell us certain things. Why did it all go bad? We heard the rage during the campaign, but the dust has settled. And I believe there are untold stories which need to be told. So I know you have enjoyed the hurt and the insult. Former Prime Minister Timothy Harris, time to stand up again and be counted.
If you know Timothy Harris from over the years, he's not one who's going to shy away from saying what he feels needs to be said, and so as you said, that is going to be particularly interesting as well. And when former Prime Minister gets going and he's very explosive, and so that should be interesting as well. I mean, I'm sure he has quite a bit more tale to tell than just geothermal, and so we'll see how much of that comes out and the impact that is going to have on not just Nevis but the federal government going forward, the relationship that is currently there. Quite a bit, to talk about geothermal. Did some reading and recognize that this thing goes way back to 2013. That is when around that time CDB engaged. I think it was former Premier Vance Emery. And so, CDB's involvement in this isn't new, as new as the current Premier would want to make one feel, and it's interesting. You see the contrasting stories as it relates to geothermal. There was this cautious approach from the federal government, who of course, we now know Nevis has no legal standing, and so all of these things now has to come through the bearing of the Attorney General and so on. And the Premier who speaks in this lofty and grandiose fashion of things moving swiftly ahead. That isn't the case. And if one would do some reading and investigation, I heard that CDB was the one to be funding the geothermal project. That isn't exactly how it works. There is phase approach, and there are certain grant funding that are available for certain parts of the project. But a project costing almost $100 million, one would question how much of that the CDB is really going to be putting forward in terms of their involvement in it, and what kind of relationship or partnership is expected going forward. And so we take a deeper look, and as divisions, we really got to get to the point where we stop just accepting things at the surface, and to look a little deeper and to get a deeper understanding and ask serious questions and demand answers, because we know how this government has the profound ability to baffle people with bullshit.
A bit harsh language. I attended part of a lecture series at the Jessop's Community Center last week, put on by the Honorable Cleon Stapleton Simmons, and the topic was geothermal. 3-person panel. Cartwright Farrell, former general manager of Nevlec and Nelda, also an engineer with Nevlec, and Dr. Narayan. And very interesting, party leader Dr. Janice Donnell Hodge many times on this program has talked about the Green Energy Fund. Narayan went down the same path. And of course the CDB involvement. And that's why I said we're hearing more about this project coming out of St. Kitts from a man who was supposed to throw the switch in December of 2017. And it's very instructive what we heard at that lecture, and very informative indeed. So we will await further word, but I see St. Kitts, the federal level, is moving right ahead. Now I say it's going to be a defining week because of events which took place on the weekend. The Premier and 2 of his colleagues went to the Virgin Islands to launch their campaign for the Nevis local elections. They didn't do it here, but they took to the road to St. Thomas, Tortola, and St. Croix. Of course, people in the diaspora seem to matter more. They do matter, but of course, all politics begins at home. So, the campaign was launched. And some of you may wonder why at this point in time. It is on this same week, 5 years ago, October 29th, 2017, that former Premier of Nevis ceded leadership. No, let me take that back. Where leadership was wrested from former Premier Van Samry. And so this week marks 5 years. And it's very instructive that in that same week, the campaign for re-election starts. That transfer of power, of course, happened at places of all places, the Nevis Performing Arts Center. In accepting, President Premier said it was the smoothest transition in the history of mankind. He waxed biblical. He said Moses was passing the baton to Joshua, and that he would take us to the promised land. 5 years on, what has happened? There was an acrimonious relationship between the two, played out specifically at the federal level. Van Samry transitioned in April 2nd of this year. The Premier brought down a government on his own head on August 5th. And that is what has brought us here. Another of his diversionary tactics to detract from the fact that he tomorrow becomes leader of his loyal opposition. Now mind you, he was sworn in on the 10th, but didn't see the need to tell the people of Nevis until Wednesday, the 19th, 9 days after. He knows it is dubious. And so this shenanigans, as you said, the fair share argument, which started early in 2022, after he sat and endorsed the budget of December 2021 and said all was fine. But with the local elections staring him in the face, and with not much to report, decided to have some cataflang, fair share, which has gone away since the elections. He said, the elections are over. It's time for governance. It's not as simple as that, my boy, because you told us in 2020, to give you all three to go to Bastia to improve our lives. And you got a mandate again, and he thinks it's business as usual. It's amazing how our history has come full circle as he's trying to bamboozle yet again the people of Nevis from the reality. He is leader of his loyal opposition, having given up his positions on the government benches. He must know that in the Westminster system, that's where you effect change. We're in for an exciting night. We're inviting your calls, whether you're on Nevis, overseas, or in St. Kitts. Very important times in our island's history. We'll take a break, and then, well, I think we have an indication we've got our first caller, so we'll welcome that person. Good evening. Oh, that person has gone. We'll hold for a little while to see if the person gets back in. Do give us a call. So much of interest to discuss among the people of St. Kitts and the Nevis. We really want it to be a very busy night here. But Rowan, as I was saying, we've come full circle.
Yeah, I mean, when you said promised land, I smiled to myself because in 2017 there was quite a bit of promises made, and quite a bit hasn't been delivered, and so we have yet to even begin to imagine where the promised land is, because this land, Nevis still lacks the development we'd have hoped for, having heard from him, having seen the litany of things that he would do, development of music art studio for young people, that is still in the wind. Grove Park was to get a multi-million-dollar
13 million
upgrade, that is still in the wind. A $6 million facility at Oli, still waiting for that to be completed. The hospital going on $20 million, and it's really just a shell, and I think people need to understand and appreciate that for what it is. It's just a shell, $20 million shell, just sitting there, and it's quite interesting to the approach that they have taken, and one of the things that I've always looked at system, they're more concrete and steel than people development, which contrasts their central motto of people
matter more,
and so it's really night and day when you listen and you look at his presentations or you look at their presentations as opposed to their performances, and we are simply saying, listen, we have the track record of producing on both ends of the spectrum for Nevision, people development and physical development. We have seen and we have heard the struggles of Nevisions, and we have put our plans and policies and our programs right on the table for everybody to see and question and remark on and give whatever suggestions they want to give, because we believe that is how governance works. The involvement of our people is important in progressing the nation, and we are saying, and we have said time and time again, that is the best approach forward. And so we head into this local election, we're going to continue pushing that message. I've said time and time again, when Nevis is in need of being rescued, it has always been an NRP that has done the job, and so we are very much hopeful and we believe strongly in the ability of our team led by Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge. We are in a realm now where our leadership fits perfectly with what is happening globally. In terms of our economics, in terms of our social development, we ought to be looking at being leaders again, rather than always trying to catch up and being behind. I think Barbados at the moment probably one of the only Caribbean islands who are pushing hard with the blue economy, and we have seen the wonders that has done for Barbados, and our leader, front and center, understands very well what is involved in the blue economy, and so that is going to bode well for Nevisions. Our orange economy and small business, we talk a lot about small business development and our incubator program, which is designed to give our people the opportunity to succeed. and that is important. And so we are geared up, we are ready, we are energized, we really hoping that the Visions are taking our message, continue to reach out and to speak to our constituents and to hear from them. That is the basis of our positions. A lot of our ideas, people are going to relate to them because they come from the people. We have taken the time to listen, to understand what their cries are, and to formulate plans and policies that are going to work in the best interest of the Visions. And so we continue to ask the Visions, come this December and give yourself the best Christmas gift you can possibly give before the NRP party to lead Nevis.
Now, you did mention the NRP, and it is because of the NRP also why this is a defining week. It's a week in which the Nevis Reformation Party, Nevis's most transformative party, turns 52. We're going to look at some of the activities later in the program, but in chronicling the failures of the CCM, you missed two very important ones. The Newcastle or the Vance Amory International Airport. We heard when the CCM was in opposition that the NRP wasn't bringing any flights there because it bore the name of the CCM party leader. The Minister of Aviation had all the answers, but now the airport is totally comatose. And of course, you're a man of sports. You missed the Mondo track as well.
Yes.
In 2018, there were more drones flying over that place than planes landing at the Vance Amory International. They said it was going to be a winter training place for athletes coming down from Canada and America and colder climes. Neither has materialized.
Yeah, well, of course, COVID is going to be blamed, possibly, acceptable in some realms. But my problem, Steve, is simply this. I mean, I believe that if we're going to start projects like those, we ought to ensure that we're starting to complete. I really believe that. And I know a lot of people have made the argument, well, the track is the most important thing. Okay. Can't they run a track? Fine. Alright, but then what? That is just your local arena. Let's talk about how do you attract regional and international games. What do you have attached to the Mondo track? We have seen and we have heard how the facilities and the equipment we still don't have. And so even when SK and AAA wants to host an event here in Nevis, a trailer or two has to come over with the required equipment to host those games. And so it's not just when we talk about the completion of the facility, it's not just the completion of the physical space, but the things that are attached to the physical space. We are the programs that should align with a facility of that nature, that would allow our coaches to upgrade themselves to different levels, and in that transferring that knowledge to our young athletes, and so that they can elevate and we can move our children from one level to the next, moving them from a local to a regional to international. Those things are not there. And that is the argument I am constantly trying to make. It is not just about the physical. It would be nice, it would be great to have the physical, and we can get a lot more, because when international and regional organizations come to look at your facilities, the facility must set itself in the physical realm, and then you can always move forward in other aspects. You talk about winter training. COVID has seemingly head to its endemic stage, and so let's see if that prospect of winter training come true in that regard. We're heading into winter now, but we have got to be able to match the physical development of our island with purposeful programs designed to move our people forward. It's well and good to say we have, a grade 1 or class 1 or whatever classification is given, but how are we and how are young people, how are athletes benefiting wholesomely from that? And don't just tell me they're running on one of the best surfaces in the world. All right, but I want to see them running on surfaces at high level at Carifta, at high level at World Championships, at high level at the Olympics. That is what we should be aiming at. That is what we should be gearing at. And it's not just the athletics. Of course, they'll tell you there's a FIFA certified surface there. And you ask people about the surface is not really up to its standard, or the standard it should be. And it's a lot of things. I mean, how is that we are not having football over there? How is that we are not having football? And so it's more than to just tell us that yes, that is, I mean, they said the PA is there, boats can duck. Track is there, they can run. There's a hospital shut up there. Can we use that? We've really got to do better. Divisions deserve better, and divisions have got to put themselves in a position to demand better. And there's nothing wrong with wanting better, and there's nothing wrong with demanding from your elected representatives, just as much as you seek to hold the opposition members accountable and to hold them to the fire. That is what we're expecting you to do to your elected representatives, to demand that they're performing at the level that you elected them to serve. And when they don't do that, it's time for you to say goodbye.
Now, history will record that our Premier was also Minister of Aviation. No one can point to any improvement which was brought to the Van Zamri International Airport. As Minister of Foreign Affairs, the most traveled in the region, went to all reaches of the world. I'll hold my thoughts there because we've got our first caller on the line. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Your Voice with the NRP.
Good evening, Mr. Manos.
Hi, good evening.
Ron, good night.
Good night, good night.
How are you guys?
Oh, we're doing fine.
Oh, good to hear that. Gentlemen, you know, earlier this year, when the campaign was launched for the federal elections, I heard some people mentioning fair share. And I was confused because it is my belief that in these kind of matters, there is nothing called fair share, but rather you put men in responsible position and you expect them to be able to sit down at a negotiating table and negotiate and bargain for the best possible deal. So I was kind of confused, and I was wondering, what does fair share really mean? And I noted that it was the whole tenet of the argument for the campaign for particular people. Oh, fair share. I was at one of the political meetings in Bath Village, and I was saying, why not say to the people of Bath that we are going to try to fix the road for you that we have started, rather than the whole night just talk about fair share. And I was approached by someone who didn't like what I was saying, and I said, there's nothing called fair share. I could have gone on. He said to me, what do you mean by that? I said, just what I said. In these matters, there's nothing called fair share. Well, I could have gone on to explain that it was not a good strategy. But the conversation ended there because the person moved away. But I could have gone on and said, it's not a good strategy, because should you not form part of the next government, you may have to move away from that. And it seemed to me like that is exactly what is happening now. Well, I am wondering if the fair share was only applicable when there's a certain administration in place, or if it was some sort of personal thing with somebody or what? Because since that election, I have not heard much about the fair share.
The new word is equitable.
As a matter of fact, I have been hearing almost the opposite. And I'm here saying, I wish somebody had listened to me. When I was trying to explain to them, it was not a good strategy. But I'll leave it there for now, gentlemen.
No, Rowan, as you said, you haven't heard about it. The new term is equitable. But we all know, and we've said here very often, we know it was supposed to drum up support for the election. Yeah. And that has basically gone by the wayside.
Yeah, I mean, see, it was an emotional argument. Really and truly, people don't like things that are not fair. So if you give that argument and you give the impression that money and you talk about money and fairness, listen, you're going to get people riled up every time. And so that is really what it was. It was an emotional argument, and it worked because people felt that the unity administration was being unfair in what was happening in terms of the arrangement, because you're talking money and it's a difficult time, and people believe if we are getting our fair share, things are going to happen. And we were trying to show people $500 million, $500 million. You have gotten that much. How much of that have you gotten? But it is the nature of the beast. The argument played well. Emotions were heightened. Of course, there are other factors that played into the election results. But by and large, what was intended by the argument succeeded. That was to get people emotional and to believe that, listen, if we can get our fair share, we're still waiting on the number to justify what fair really is. For me, I've always said, what is your rightful share? Fear is relative. Right and wrong isn't. It's either right or it's not right, right? But be that as it may, as the gentleman said, we are seeing now how the argument really doesn't match the outcome, because it's strange. Where is the aggression? Why has the aggression gone away?
It's been diminished.
I mean, they're not your friends. As far as we can tell, you removed them from power in 2010, right? So, and they're here again. I'm still trying to figure out what changed.
We've got another caller on the line. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Your Voice with the NRP. And I think we lost that one. Now, the other argument we're going to hear, he has been telegraphing it for a while, is that he lost 2 years of his premiership
to
COVID. But he's been part of an administration since 2013, so we are going on a decade. But to compound matters, of his own doing and his shenanigans, we have also lost 2022. Because as I said earlier, the National Assembly, where you should go to debate and ask for Nevis's fair share, has not convened for 2022. I'll get back to that. We've got the caller back. Good evening, caller.
A pleasant good evening to you.
Yes, could you lift your voice, please?
Yes, a pleasant good evening to you.
Yes, good evening.
Yes. Okay. Did you all know that they were planning for Timothy long time, and when they finish, they go on top the year and they come tell us that every time they ask Timothy for something, he fix his face, he push up his face, but they cannot say what he pushing up his face for, what they asking for, and nothing. Do you all know that Sean had done print his button, say Prime Minister Sean Richards, before election ever being took on? As Simmons said, that the all he put in there to get the rid of Doggy. After they don't get the rid of Doggy, then that's how they plan to pay him, to throw him out and the scrap heap, as Mr. Brandt just say in the party alone and whatnot. Do you know that they don't have button print and everything for Sean, and the election never call yet? Up to when they have the press, the thing, or the conference, or carry on. Some of them had the button, and some did not have no button. Now, if the election ain't called as it, why are you going to put button and to give out to people to put on?
It's called counting your chickens before they hatch.
Sean had done get talking too, because the late Vance Amory had done speak to Sean and tell Sean be real of Mr. Brantley because he is not a good person, and Sean did not listen. The wife and all speak to him when they bring in the dead body up at the airport up there. When she come in and she says, Sean, Mark Brantley and Douglas over there chatting, he called him by himself and asked him if Mr. Brantley, if Mr. Vance Amory never speak to him. And he said, yes, but it's done too late. So he did not want no talking to. So nobody's supposed to sorry for him right now. What he get, let he take. He buy that. And he gonna re-eat, he make up his bed, they sleep in it. All of them done had a plan for him long time before the election call, because if you listen to Mr. Brantley, I mean, they say a lawyer have a short memory. He speak things, and when he done, go over it and say something else. Now, when they used to call him, when somebody called him, tell him that Sean was swaying the Prime Minister, he said, he not iron no clothes to come down here, come swaying no body. So they don't plan that for the Prime Minister, Dr. Timothy Harris, long time, and they just finding scapegoat to go on and I come at all. But when they ask for things, he ain't giving them and them a push up the face and what's not. That's a lie from hell, and whatever they're going through, they can go through. The army and Timothy Harris going to the House of Assembly, and I will ask him please to stay in his lane and keep from them, because they was going to laugh after him over and the opposition bench. But praise the Lord, God moving on mysteriously, and you wonder where to perform. All of them on the opposition bench. So let me see who gonna laugh after who. Mr. Timothy Harris, stay in your lane and leave them out there. And if you don't have nothing to talk, when the time comes, shut your mouth and let them go ahead do what they got to do. You all have a pleasant night.
Thank you, caller. A very interesting caller. As I said, I think there's so many stories out there which need to be told, and I think over time they will be told. Very interesting. But I was saying that to compound the point that the Premier is trying to make, that COVID took 2 years from him, we've lost 2022. The federal government has not met in Parliament. The Nevis Island administration, they went there last week, but we know they have not been regular at all, and now we're swinging into a local election, and we know that consumes the Premier of Nevis. So 2022, as I've said many times, has been lost for Nevis, lost to Nevis.
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes just chuckle at certain things. In leadership, you it's good and bad times. I don't know, we get off on the notion of you lost because of COVID, and the only government I've heard regionally and internationally talk about having lost because of COVID. That is part of why you're elected. You're elected not just to manage the country in good times, but you're elected to come up with ideas and solutions to difficult periods. You know, it's not a case of you losing, but how do you best place the country or the island you lead to recover from your difficulty? I didn't hear J.W. Parry talk about losing
during the economic crisis.
And the economic crisis. I didn't hear Barack Obama speaking about that. I didn't hear Mia Motley saying that she lost either, or Andrew Holness and the other regional leaders. They buckled down, found ways in listening to what were best practices globally, what the economists were saying, and weathered the storm and are now rebounding stronger day by day. When we spoke about the economic recovery, because our approach to COVID was two-phased, you had to manage the health crisis, but you still had to be in a position economically so that you could benefit. And so when you look at projections and you hear how small islands and large islands are coming out of the crisis, you'll see which country was really handling the crisis the way it should have been handled. I've said time and time again, it wasn't me who said it, but world economists and leading financial institutions were talking about granting liquidity to their people. And because that was setting up islands and countries to come out of the COVID disaster stronger and to be on a strong footing. And that didn't happen here, save and except from the federal government. And we have always talked about what comes from them should be gravy. We really want to be just lapping up and enjoying that, because we have had strong economic performances and we are holding our own, but that hasn't happened. Since 2017, I think we've had only one budget presentation that was in the black, and I think that was because Four Seasons had just reopened, and there was some boom going on there. But other than that, it's been deficit after deficit. And so it's particularly funny to hear him talk about. I don't see how you lose something you never really had in the first place. Anyway, so
never in the course of Nevis politics has so much damage been done to so many by so few. Brantley, Jeffers, and Evelyn. They crashed a government in which they were well placed to benefit the people of Nevis, and now find themselves on the opposition benches. You will recall that on Saturday, April 16th, the Premier came to us in a national address and said, "We have lost our way," just like the Conservative government in the United Kingdom. We got to find our way back somehow, Rohan. We're not in a good place.
Yeah, I mean, and I think we all know the answer to that. News Reformation Party, again, has always provided that positive response when we are in difficult periods. We're in difficult times. It has always been an NRP-led administration. And I've used examples of going back to Dr. Simeon Daniel, and when we had to come out of the Christina disaster and buckle down and got to work and really put Nevis on that trajectory to self-reliance. And then you just spoke about the economic recession. And it was J.W. Parry who again went to work, ensuring that divisions were at work. A lot of people credit the international realm of stimulus packages to Barack Obama, but it was J.W. Parry. Long before Barack Obama spoke of that, went to work on a stimulus package. Housing project and community centers to ensure that there were job opportunities and that the economy had a good standing. And so now at this juncture, at this time in our history, when we are facing double whammy, poor leadership and a COVID crisis that has really hit us hard, and our inability to plan properly, to have creative ideas to get out of that, it baffles me how we look globally and we see the era of technology. It was really that space, billion-dollar industry during COVID, during that two-year period alone, became a multi-billion-dollar industry, and we earned not 1 cent. And we have the talent, and it is because we weren't creative enough. We didn't expend enough energy and enough time in that space, and so many of our young people who are home and have so much interest and input in that in that area, we could have done wonders, and that didn't and that didn't happen. And so it's going to take a Janice Daniel Hodge-led NRP administration to put Nevis back on that good standing, to put up the crown back on her head, and to really be called the Queen of the Caribbean again.
Minutes after the CCM jumped on a plane to the Virgin Islands, the NIA issued a press release which basically said that they could make the adjustment to pay the honorarium to Nevis civil servants, frontline workers, because they'd only heard about it from a media release. So walking through the supermarkets on the weekend, there are people approaching me. They say they want the honorarium. When is it going to come? What did you make of that whole scenario?
I've seen it before. I think I saw it on the issuance of double salary. When some, I think they were paid after payday, and it was a case of not knowing.
And we cite in April thereabout with the increase of the 10%.
Increase of the 10%. Having agreed. I mean, it's funny how, you know, your partner said it was 15%. That was the agreed, but you have absolutely no idea about 10%, and you're not in a position to pay that. But come, you know, next year you will pay that 5%, and now we're seeing the honorarium, but conversations were had prior to that, and he admitted to that. He spoke at his press conference, and he missed the opportunity. And for me, that is telling, because again, where people matter most, how do you miss an opportunity to say thank you to people who would have put their lives on the line during a COVID era pandemic? We haven't seen anything like this in 100 years. And people went out day and night working and sacrificing. But you have the opportunity, because you would have heard, like the rest of us, the Prime Minister speaking about paying an honorarium. And you missed the opportunity to bring up that conversation. Outside of that, two manners. Why are we waiting for the Prime Minister to issue anything on paying our people in that regard? But it goes to the heart of the fact that really there is no money. I mean, there's a lot of things to consider. We couldn't pay 10% earlier in this year, but we are surely finding money to do quite a bit on the eve of a local election.
The Prime Minister made that announcement in his Independence Day address. So that was September 19th. Devon Cornelius of Win Media asked the question. It was the last question at the last press conference, which I think was October 6th. And he said, oh, I met with the Prime Minister the day before, and somehow it slipped him, but I'll pick it up with him. And then come back many days after, as you go off to the Virgin Islands, to tell us we didn't put any provisions in place. I think we probably got another caller on the line. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Your Voice with the NRP.
Good evening, Mr. Manners.
Hi, good evening.
And good evening, Mr. Earls.
Good night.
Mr. Earls, I want to speak to the honorarium that should have been paid to shelter managers and the staff in 2017 after those two hurricanes. Let the people know, NEMA and the shelter managers and thinkers get there. So I would like you to speak to that, Mr. S, please. Thank you.
Well, I worked at Nevis as a manager in 2017. And of course, in that period of time, we saw, that history making hurricanes Irma and Maria, who, to this I'm still marveled of how they managed to miss us 1 degree on either side. But the decision was made was to pay shelter managers, I think it was $250 per day for having worked during that period of time. Of course, when you work there, you don't get overtime. It's a call to national duty. But the Prime Minister thought in his wisdom and agreed to by his cabinet that to give something. And we asked for quite a long time as to, when would we be getting such a payment? And as the caller rightly said, those in sync, it's got theirs on time, and we know they got theirs because we have a very good working relationship with our counterparts over at Newman. So it goes for a lot of people deeper than just now, because 5 years on and they have still not received. We have still not received, because I haven't received any payments of the sort. And it is disheartening to know that the second time around, and these individuals who I said who would have put themselves on the front line. I know of colleagues who contracted COVID as a result, and so
go ahead. I think have we got the caller?
It is truly disheartening, and I think not only should that they receive this honorarium, but they should get what was due to them in 2017 as well.
Okay, I think we've got the caller on the line at the moment. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Your Voice with the NRP.
Good evening, Mr. Manners.
Hi, good evening.
Mr. Iles.
Good night.
I may have missed some of what you've been saying because I had some challenges with the phone line getting in, and then the watching you online disconnected. Anyway, one of the things I found most distressing this weekend was the fact that persons were not able to enjoy their honorarium, yet you had the leading figures in the NIA going off on a trip obviously that was planned prior to this, but nevertheless, I was very uncomfortable with the fact that people worked hard, people sacrificed during the pandemic, and they were not able. And to listen to what I consider to be foolish arguments about the fact about a list and all of that, those things should have been in place already. We heard Dr. Drew talk about the honorarium being paid, or hoping to pay it, since back as early as the 5th of August when he won the election. That was one of the first things he talked about. So why then could one be so uncaring, for want of a better word, to jump on a plane and get out of here to go do whatever, leaving people not being paid when others were paid across the waters? I find that despicable, to be quite frank with you. What do you gentlemen think of that?
Rohan? I think you've spoken to that. You may have missed that when you were trying to get in, but Rohan spoke quite eloquently to that. It's not a good look.
Yeah, I mean, I agree wholeheartedly with you, and I was, for the sake of the presentation, was just sharing that in 2017 as well, the workers at the shelters that are assigned for hurricane purposes, and the staff at News Disaster Management, they too should have gotten an honorarium payment. Their colleagues would have gotten it from St. Kitts, from NEAM, and those who worked during that hurricane, they would have gotten it, and the divisions did not get it. And so it's a double sting this time around, when the honorarium should have been paid, and we're waiting for, and this for me, man, as I said, is really, the biggest gripe. Why are we waiting for somebody else to tell us that we need to pay out that? And there's a lot more than that. And you go to representation and representative politics, because when you look at how honorariums prior to this one were paid in value, our director at News Disaster Management, Brian Dye, who continues to work very hard, they were paid less than their counterparts in St. Kitts. I think Mr. Dyer got somewhere around $6,000-7,000, and Mr. Samuel was up in 27. and
nobody argued about fair share.
And exactly. And as you said, fair share has to be more than what is happening at the top level. These are things that should have been argued at the fair share level. Is that fair? And anybody would say no, that isn't fair, and one would say, well, but relative to how that wasn't, nobody argued that, and as I say, it's a double sting for them, and I'm saying that I'm sure they still want that $1,000 that they should have gotten for those 2 hurricanes, and whatever is due this time around.
What you said very interesting is it speaks to how we do things, and we need to pull up our boots, because why would somebody be asking about lists now? Shouldn't those lists would have been in place sometime before? Would NEMA or whoever the leading agencies, would they not have known who some of the frontline workers were, because they were the people out there on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, the issue of a list,
who is not allowed to move about, who's working, who's not working.
Exactly.
So
This
why
is-
are we stumbling back and forth talking about a list right now?
Yeah, this is our list is a non-starter.
It's a long time ago.
It's a non-starter really, because during the pandemic, only certain people are allowed to move. So you had to know who was allowed to move, unless, you know, we figured, well, we're getting close to the endemic stage, so we just dash away all the files. So that is a non-starter. To say you're going to compile this really isn't the argument to start with. You already know, or you already have at least a 90% idea of the individuals who are on the front line. So and some of them you don't have to worry about paying them, because they're going to be paid for by the federal government. So you should have already, okay, well, those people don't have to deal with them. These people here, okay, these are who we have to deal with. You already know that, because this is not a case of private entities and so on. This is government workers you're talking about. And so for me, it's a non-starter really. I think it's just another case of bluff and baffle.
Caller?
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, caller. And if Rohan's answer isn't enough, let's listen to Lady Independent. Simply, people don't matter anymore. We'll take a break.
I say we tired, I say keep the momentum. Oh, Mr. Premier, where we get the energy from. I say we tired, time to protect the poor. Just remember, people matter more.
People don't matter anymore. Now, Rohan, you said that will be, and there is already a lot of money floating around as we approach the local elections in Nevis. Saw a very interesting post you made today. Nevis 3, Gingerland always seems to get the bad end of the stick. I want you to read it into the record after you make your opening comment on it.
You know, I mean, I was going to open with, I was going to say, with Gingerland, I don't believe that the system administration really likes the constituency Nevis 3. The reality is that it's been a long time. It's been a very long time, almost as old as I am, that the constituency of Nevis 3 has felt the bitter end of whatever relative development we have seen over the past years, and that is quite disheartening, because I can remember Gingerland where Gingerlanders were proud of, the Gingerland where the visions were proud of. And I remember travelling from Barnsworth on the back of a pickup every so often, the Easter weekend, to get down to Indian Castle and horse racing, and the spectacle that it was. Thousands and thousands of individuals. And I remember Gingerland, where market shop, even in my tender age with my father, having to slow down in that area as you see the activities going on there. Rollins was a hotbed. And even now, as people are still holding on to those memories, they are yearning for so much more. There is still a desire to see Gingerland rise again. And that is why we are constantly using the caption, Rise Gingerland, or to build a better Gingerland with you, because we believe in a Gingerland for Gingerlanders. And so the post would have really spoken to, you look at Gingerland really as a microcosm of Nevis. You see a larger scale of a lot of things, and Gingerland is that. This is 2022, and $1 billion later. And when I say that, people wonder where we get $1 billion from, because you take the 500 million and you take what we would have earned in terms of revenue, and it's just over $1 billion. Gingerland has yet to see a dime. When you look at Gingerland, there's no modern health facility. There's no real solution to the housing problem. We're still trying to put down these, wonderful and loft housing developments, and I have no problem with them, people who can afford them. But that is not where the problem is in terms of the housing solution. You get people who can't afford those houses, but they want housing. And the problem is, we are not looking at solving those problems. You know, we are going to put on a housing development, and if you can't afford, too bad for you. That can't be the way. Governance, good governance, says that we are supposed to ensure that everybody has even the minimum standard of development. That is critical. Even as we continue to offer or to provide for sustained upward mobility and prosperity. No job opportunities. Underdeveloped sorting facilities, and no matter what you try, you can't continue to just dab plaster on these things and say you're doing wonders. We have got to look beyond that. I would like to think that we take a 5-year approach to the development of sorting facilities in Gingerland, and we say, listen, in year 1 we are going to fully upgrade and redevelop Hard Times playing field, and we are going to call it the Ronald Camotin Sporting Complex. We are going to attach a cricket academy to that, so that the talent that is in Gingerland can go beyond Gingerland and to the Leewards and to the West Indies and to the international scene. That isn't happening, and so that is the poor road networks. And I went to Rollins, and one gentleman said to me, listen, the only how I am entertaining anything you're going to say is if paving Rollins Road is on the political platform. Straight up. And I can understand why, and I can appreciate why. I come from Mansfield, and Rollins gives you that man's got homely feel.
The 2 fruit baskets,
right? And so I can appreciate that, and they tell me, listen, there's a road on the next side and carry a particular name, and that seems to be what they're proud of. But why are we getting second in terms of development when everybody else is getting their nice asphalt roads in some areas, albeit that they're paving them twice and 3 times? But another conversation for another time. We are faced with increased cost of living, while the standard of living continues to fade. So again, another double whammy. Some of us truly, and this is what is disheartening to me, because I pride my representation on humanity, and people really and truly cannot afford the basic things, those things that were placed in the basket back in 2015. People really can't afford some of those things. You go to the supermarket now, and a tuna is at $5. The sardine is going up there. What are we doing creatively to remedy those situations, even if it's for a short term? Listen, sometimes you have got to tell big supermarkets, listen, for the next 3-4 months you may take a little blow, but I'm going to do something in the interim, because our people cannot manage the cost. It is not a fault of yours. We understand certain things are happening globally, but as a government we have got to get into this gap here now, and we are going to say, listen, we are going to have to bring in 3 containers of food produce, and we are going to have to sell them at break even, so that real relief comes to our people when we have enough economic stability, and we have that economic recovery, and we have that economic growth. Go back. Because we know the prices are going to be affordable. We know we would have provided real jobs for people. We know that families will be in a position to take care of themselves. Listen, basic things. People can't save. People can't even take vacations, and these are important things in the development of families. And we take it for granted, and they say, I'm not going on any vacation. You're not going. So we can't afford to go. But it builds the bonds of family, and these are things that are important to people. And Steve, while the resilience of our people continues to find a way, and that is all it is. I listen to this government take credit for a lot of things, and I smile to myself, because I have lived that, and I know it is because of what I would have learned from my mother and my grandmother I am able to survive. And if at my age I surely can appreciate that people are older than me using that very same division resilience to survive. It's nothing that this government has done to grant them any, space within the current climate that they are facing. And that shouldn't always have to be the case. You elected a CCM government on a mandate to improve lives, and I remember very well they asked a question, they talked about the cost of living and how they were going to bring down the cost of living. That was a hot button for them. Are you truly better off today? And you must ask yourself that and answer that honestly. Are you truly better off today? Is the cost of living lower? Are jobs readily available? Are your healthcare facilities what they should be? We are still in community centers in some of our districts. In 2022, why aren't we building out a network of polyclinics across the island of Nevis? Why are we restricting ourselves to the size that we are and say, well, you get the service still? But there is something about looking at physical structures that bring a sense of pride to a community. When people can look and say, boy, that building they engineer, and it makes you feel good about yourself. And people who feel good about themselves and people who are happy are higher producing employees.
All the time.
And that is part of what needs to happen. Are our young people positioned to take us beyond tomorrow? That is critically important for the NRP. And I have said this time and time again, young people cannot be for the future if they are not going to lead today. Tomorrow is the future, they can't wait until tomorrow to do it. And so we have got to position our young people to take Nevis beyond tomorrow. And so more than $1 billion, and 5 years later, and we still wait in this language state. Why us? Why is that we have to endure these kind of things? Why is it that our government isn't putting things in place to help us? You know, Steve, I'm guaranteeing you that if people mattered most, or if people matter more, if people were the focus, the centerpiece of this administration's thrust into the new, 10 years, the next 10, 15 years, we would have been better off, Because the last 2 years wasn't about physical development. Nobody around the world was concerning themselves about building anything. They were trying to get their people to survive that particular period. And having managed that period now, we spoke about the two-pronged approach, planning for the future. And so in that gap, listen, people need to survive. Normalcy is important. We spoke a lot about mental health. And we know the records are there to show how people suffered during the period. It wasn't just a case because they had to stay home in certain environments for long periods of time. But the reality is that even when they were allowed to go out, they didn't go because there was no money to go and get the basic necessities that they want. Everybody knows things are compounded 100 times over when money becomes an issue. World Bank, leading financial institutions and economists said, listen, give your people some liquidity, give them some cash. It's not give them that because that is going to give them a sense of normalcy. They can go downtown and pay the water bill, they can pay something on the electricity bill, and they can buy some groceries. And so that cluster in the mind that I am shut in and the fear of the COVID wouldn't be so much. That didn't happen. And because of that, we are struggling. So come December, as I said before, Nevis Free, because I've always said to the people of Nevis Free, any prosperity going forward has got to come to Nevis Free. Because Gingerland is perfectly poised for development. It is a blank slate. And if we take our time and come up with a proper developmental agenda for Gingerland, then prosperity is going to spread around. And I believe that, and I've said to the party leader, there are certain things from day one that are going to land on your desk. Because Gingerland has got to catch up relatively to what is happening around the island in terms of development, and the development will go back to the areas of Joseph, of NRP and J.W. Parry. And so, Nevis has a perfect opportunity to lead Nevis out of the slump, to restore the crown to her head, and to grant her people the opportunity of prosperity, the comfort of peace, and the assurance of progress. I want to tell Nevisians, your future is now, and the NRP is best placed to deliver a Nevis that is for Nevisians.
Well written and well said. I'm extremely keen on seeing development and job opportunities for young people. Our Premier is on record as saying that diplomacy is not about bringing anything back. I'll be damned if he comes back from the state-sponsored trip to Taiwan without bringing back some initiative which will benefit the young people of this country. And I said to the Honorable Cleon Stapleton Simmons, good that you're on that trip. Whisper in his ear every day you're in Taipei that it's not just about further opportunities, it's not just about planting trees, but bringing benefits back to your people. So I expect that when you return here that we will hear about something high-tech
Yes.
for the younger generation in our country. Now, the NRP is always the savior of Nevis. Turns 52 this month. Tell us about the upcoming activities to commemorate that.
Yes, Steve, before I get to that, I want to piggyback of what you said, and I agree wholeheartedly about bringing back something high-tech, because that is the era in which we live. That is the realm in which our young people are. And I want to congratulate the St. Kitts Nevis Robotics Association. They participated in that tournament, I think is in Geneva in Switzerland. I have put forward STAR, Science, Technology and Research Institute. And I believe that is a perfect fit for the relationship we have with the People's Republic of China and Taiwan, the world leader in microchip producers. And if we can get a quarter of what they are doing and say to them, listen, it is going to benefit you as much as it's going to benefit us, give us an institute. Because anything and everything is possible when our young people are given the greatest opportunity. Extraordinary things happen, ordinary people are allowed to try. And that is all that needs to happen here. So I am hoping, as you said, that something high-tech is going to come back. Diplomacy always doesn't mean that you bring back something, but development requires you to. That is basic. You can't have friends internationally and there's no benefit from it. You can't grant them the ability and opportunity to travel globally to countries they would not naturally have, and then there is nothing for it. And so we must benefit from those. 52 years. We would have loved to celebrate 50 years, and COVID called us to be cautious. 52 years we are celebrating, yes, but a little tempered, and hopefully when we get to 55 we can double what 50 was. We went to church. We celebrated the anniversary itself at the church at Marion Heights, and pardon me, not familiar with the full name there, but
Ebenezer, I think, something like that.
Right. And so we were there, and Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge, masterful as usual in her representation of the Bible scripture that speaks to 52 years, and the only book in the Bible with 52 chapters, and a relationship there. And so that was good. I myself was unable to be there, but I was able to get the snippets of the presentation. On Friday we're going to have a cocktail and awards ceremony, and for the first time and going forward we're going to have the inaugural Founders Awards, and this is our way of recognizing NRP soldiers who would have contributed significantly to development and the continuity of the NRP. And so that is going to happen on Fridays, 100 EC. Get your tickets, come enjoy some fine food and wine, and of course the after party allows for an open cash bar. You can enjoy yourself there at the Occasions Event Center. I want to say thanks to Dr. Patricia Bartlett, who has been gracious in allowing us to use our facility. And then on Saturday we go to the villa for a grand family affair. It's a fun day which should have been held over the Independence weekend, and the weather didn't permit that, and so we are having that this coming Saturday. Come enjoy some wonderful games, good company, great food as well. And so that is what is happening for our 52nd anniversary as we celebrate with the people of Nevis, and we continue to do our best to ensure that there is peace, progress and prosperity for all.
And I saw Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge providing sporting equipment.
A love of cricket, and of course she every time I'm at VOJ playing field, whether I am an umpire just enjoying the game, she's there. The New Vision Togetherness Club, she has an affinity for that particular club, started from grassroots, and everything just perfectly meshes with NRP and its candidates, and that is how we are fundamentally believe in grassroots development. And so she would have presented them some cricket gears, and we are hoping that is going to help them as they participate. I think the NCA has a 10-10 upcoming, and so that is timely for them as well. And Dr. Hodge has has not been shy about our love for sports, and cricket is one of those.
And of course, tomorrow evening at the Franklin Brown Community Centre, series of town hall meetings continue.
Yeah, we moved to number 4 with our party leader, Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge. We had an exceptional one with Gains with Canes in number 1, and we continue to have conversations with the constituents of our different constituencies, and we want to hear from the constituents, and so we limit our presentations. I mean, we're very familiar with how town halls have gone. You know, we have seen, and you go and you say everything that you think you need to say, and then people don't bother to ask questions. But we are limiting our presentations to engage people. We want to hear from you. I mean, unfiltered, honest, and direct. That is the best way, and that gives us a clearer picture as to where we are, where we need to go, and how do we get there.
Yes, and of course, you spoke earlier about the Mondo track and how no development has taken place there for so many years. We still need other facilities. I've always felt that on these trips where the Premier says he can't bring back anything, that least you could do is ask for sporting equipment. The Taiwanese are good at gymnastics. They have come here and put on many exhibitions. There's sporting equipment all over the world. So until we can get the stadium, the bathroom facilities, you should be stockpiling things from friendly countries, so that once things are in place at the Mondo track, we have the facilities that would make it complete.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. One of the things from my working experience at disaster management, I found that, as you would have said, that these things are available. Not just equipment, but grants are available, and they're available plentiful. And that is something Dr. Hodge has spoken about as well, and she's well aware of the availability of grants that we have out there, that we can access in different areas. And so that is something I know for sure that she is going to be tapping into, the availability of grants, access to all this, because there's always some agency, some organization who have and willing to dispense of, and we just really have to be able to find them, tap into them. Mr. Manners, before I go, thanking the people for listening and our callers tonight, I want to say that the Gingerland constituency of the NRP is going to have a raffle. We are raffling a 55-inch smart TV, an air fryer, and a toaster, and the 20 Eastern Caribbean dollars gets you a try. I think, I might be wrong, but I'm going to go on a limb, and I think it's a winner takes all, but we'll see how that goes. So support our raffle and get yourself a nice 55-inch television or air fryer. Air fryers are the things these days. Toaster for Christmas.
And finally, before we go out with Miss Independent, tickets and their availability for Friday night.
Tickets, you can call the party headquarters, or you can contact Devon Cornelius.
Well, the party leader said today you could contact almost any member of the NRP. But
yeah, the direct you, I guess, is to contact us directly. But you can call the party secretariat at 665-1527, or you can contact Devon Cornelius 669-5786. Your best bets are those two numbers, and of course you can shop tonight and buy a ticket if you so desire. I mean, we welcome all.
Well, see you there on Friday evening in all your sartorial splendor. And so that has been our show for this evening. It's been a good one in what we know will be a defining week in our history. Premier creates dubious history tomorrow. First leader of his loyal opposition. Prince Charles should be proud, but not in visions. Good night as we go out with Lady Independent.
I say we tired, man, say keep the momentum. Oh, Mr. Premier, where we get the energy from. I say we tired, time to protect the poor. Just remember, people must
voice, your voice, your voice with the NRP. This and every Monday, 8:30 to 10 p.m. Join host Stephen Semanas and the NRP candidates as they amplify your voice.
The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Nevis Broadcasting Company Limited,